Welcome to Decode Your Burnout, the podcast where we crack the code on burnout based on three primary factors: your programming, environment, and personality. We also feature experts who debunk the myths about what it takes to be successful in their industry and spin those tips to fit the workplace so you can optimize the way you work. I'm your host, Dr. Sharon Grossman, a psychologist turned coach, author, and burnout expert. If you're burned out and want to go from exhausted to extraordinary, book a free breakthrough session with me by going to bookachatwithsharon.com. And if you want to see how you're doing and what to focus on next, download the Burnout Checklist. You'll find the link in the show notes or go to bit.ly/checkyourburnout. Now let's get started. Hello, Decode Your Burnout fans. We are here this week with another episode with me, Dr. Sharon Grossman, and I have Vanessa Zamy as our guest. She is a business expert, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and professor dedicated to helping purpose-driven business owners calmly and confidently succeed in full-time entrepreneurship. Since starting her business while employed in 2019, she was able to leave her six-figure corporate day job before doing so became a trend. Through her consulting company, Your Vision's Catalyst, Vanessa works with high-achieving, ambitious CEOs to increase their efficiency, productivity, and profitability so they can reduce overwhelm while growing their profit-producing, purpose-driven business. Vanessa has been featured in Fast Company, NPR Marketplace, and on numerous stages. In her spare time, Vanessa enjoys running and living by her mantra: have fun, make money, and share. She's a Harry Potter fan, loves musicals, and eating dessert. Well, Vanessa, so excited to have you here. Thanks for coming on to the show.
Excited to be here. Yes.
So I know that you do a lot of things right now, and this has been a bit of a journey for you as you shifted out of your day job and now you are an entrepreneur. So would you say your burnout story happened while you were working in corporate America, or is it something that happened since you became an entrepreneur? Tell us everything.
Everything would be a lot because it actually all started in high school, but and progressed from there. But ultimately, what happened was that, and there's also a lot of like me and pressure I put myself on with time and other such things of that nature. And ultimately speaking, how it all started. It's all about the starting, and then how it then manifested itself again in entrepreneurship. But started was that when I was back in high school, I also did a whole bunch of stuff. So I've always been doing a lot of stuff. It's just a thing that I've always done. And for me specifically, I did not have someone driving me around to different places. And so I grew up in the inner city. My mother was mostly working to help keep food, water, and shelter over our heads. Appreciate her and love her for that. But ultimately, it was very much I was getting myself into extracurricular activities, all such things, so I can build up my resume, so I can go to the top school, so I can like leave. So what that ended up happening was that, with that, that's when the Sunshine Burnout happened. And so there was a time, and this was at the end of junior year, and I actually was a member of the Boston Children's Chorus, right? And so I was a member of that choir, and I ended up, we ended up having to meet in some suburban town somewhere, and so I had to get myself there somehow. And so I took the train, good old public transportation. And then I remember I was walking, and this is a time when, we didn't have internet in our home. And so what I would do is I would go to the library the day before, go on Google Maps and print out directions. But this was when Google Maps looked a little different back then. But ultimately I print out directions and I would use that. Okay, so then I go, and I was just circling around. It's like, I can't find this place. Oh my God, I can't find this place. I'm gonna be late. Like, oh my God. And put all this pressure on myself to oh my God, it's work. And so ultimately I just kept walking, and I kept talking, calling the choir director, oh my God, I can't find it. Where is it? I'm walking around, all this stuff. And it was after about 2 hours of walking around this suburban town I realized the error that had happened was that pretty much it's very common in Massachusetts where there are like 3 street addresses of the same address and just a different zip code. It's just a thing that happens a lot more often than you would think. And so I ended up having the wrong town is what ended up happening. And I didn't find a place. With that being said, because of all this pressure I put on myself, I was walking back to the train station, pretty disappointed in myself, pretty much just like, I feel like I let people down. Because at the time I'd been like elected to be like the leader of the choir, like essentially other people, members of the choir had elected me to like represent them, so to speak. And so I was like, felt like I let them down, let myself down. I was like, oh my God, like how can I be so dumb and stupid or whatever. And so ultimately while walking back down to that train station, it was locked. It was the first time I'd ever had this happen to me actually. But essentially tears started coming down my eyes. So I'm trying to like hold my tears back, etc. Because I was like, I'm a young Black girl in this like mostly Caucasian neighborhood. This is like awkward. But with that being said, I ultimately was trying to like, I was just like trying to hide the tears, it was puffy eyed, it was the whole situation. But in that moment, from that essentially scenario, that is when I sort of started to think about and rethink how I thought about time and the ways that I was doing things. And then what happened again a couple of weeks later was that there was a moment during spring break, I had all this stuff that I was like bouncing in my head, and I actually physically felt like there were boxes on my shoulders. I don't know if anyone felt that, but I felt there were physically boxes on my shoulders. And I was just like, what? Like it felt like it was just like I could see the boxes. Even though they weren't like actually boxes, but I could like see them in this weird way and like feel the weight. And I was just like, okay, let me just like remove one of the boxes. Like and it was one of those, I say now, it was easier said than done that way. But now I can easily say it like, I don't remove the boxes. It was easier said than done in that moment. But ultimately that is when my relationship and rethinking how I manage and work with time started. Then fast forward many years later, I go to university, go to corporate America. And there was a moment in corporate America, and this wasn't burnout, it was more so the realization when you realize what your expectations and your life is not matching up. It's kind of just this like hopelessness level. So at the time I was in San Francisco, California, and I had been got the job that I thought I wanted. I was like, I'm in consulting for a top company and like helping companies solve problems. Yay me, woo. And so that was I was like, yay, right? And I had the first project and it was great, positive. And then essentially it was 3 months into the new role. And I found myself, I was in San Francisco at the time, and I'd woken up in the middle of the night. So I found myself, I don't know if you ever had those moments. Sharon, if you ever had those moments where, or maybe you haven't, maybe, I don't know if you haven't, or anyone listening here, but the moment where you're sleeping and you're in a dream, and there's a part of you that's like, then you realize it's a dream, and then you're like, I don't want to wake up though. I don't want to wake up, because then you realize that you have to then go back to your real life, and part of you understands what that is, and so you just don't want to wake up. And so I just didn't want to wake up. I was just like, stay sleeping. And I ended up waking up. It was like around 4 a.m. at that time. I ended up waking up, went to the restroom, and then I just like looked at my bed, and I was like, okay, I need to talk to somebody, right? And they assign you sort of mentors when you start with the companies, or people who are at least 3 position levels above you, to help guide you in the journey. And so I reached out to her, texted her early in the morning, and she was surprisingly awake. Bless her soul. And so she was surprisingly awake, and I texted her, and I was like, I cannot do this. Like, I was like, this is actually, surprisingly, this was 2017. This was 5 years ago from this week, because it was actually my birthday. So it was 5 years ago from this week, because at the time that we're recording this, it's my birthday this week. But it was 5 years ago from this week. And and so that's what happened. Wow, that's a whole new realization. I've come so far. But it was 5 years ago from this week. And so I remember texting her, I was like, I don't know like what this is. I just like something needs to change. I cannot go to this next project. And it was the whole thing. And thankfully she was awake and she like helped guide us. And so then I went to sleep. I was like, okay, I reached out for help. Then I can go to sleep and actually wake up in the next couple of hours. In the next like 2 hours or so. Probably I think it was like, what time did I actually wake up at that time? It's like 6 a.m. So it was probably like in 2 hours or so. But with that being said, so I was like that experience. So I was just like, okay, life is not my expectations. Now I did stay with the job though. I stayed with the company. So you don't know any other options. You're just like, well, I don't know what else to do, but this is not it. And so I kind of equate that moment actually to I'm actually not prone to panic attacks, but I know friends who are. And so when I think about that moment and that like time, essentially, pretty much I had like a panic attack. I pretty much had a panic attack in the middle of my sleep, middle of the night. That's pretty much what it was just like, oh my God. And then fast forward a couple of years after that, and I'd say essentially all these stories and experiences are essentially the moment before the burnout occurred. And so what you're seeing is a pattern here where, for me, I've been able to have the self-awareness in my life, but I've needed to have it. So hypervigilance, yay. But the self-awareness in my life to realize when my body kind of gives me a warning sign, and I listen to the warning sign.